Hi guys, I'm Kareece from Freestyle Now. We're going to be building a scooter, doing a how-to for you guys, so you guys know how to build up your setups at home. If not, you could always go into a scooter shop, but sometimes it's good to know what you're working with and what to do with your parts. So there's 9 components when it comes to a scooter. You're going to have your handlebars, you're going to have your grip tape, you're going to have your headset, your compression system, your compression clamp, you're going to have your grips, your wheels, your fork, your deck, and you may be going, hey, that's only 8 parts. Bearings for your wheels. So not only your headset bearings for your deck, but your bearings for your wheels. Usually bearings come in your wheels, so you might not have to worry about that. For today we aren't, we already got them in the wheels. So to build a scooter, you're gonna need a few tools on you. You're gonna need at least max 2 5mm Allen keys. 5mm Allen keys right here. You're gonna need 2 6s at least. Some scooters you might only need 2 5s and 1 6. Some other scooters you might need 2 6s and 1 5. Sometimes you only even need 1 5, 1 6, and a trusty wrench as well. Because a lot of times with axles, there'll either be 2 Allen keys or might even be an Allen key with a nut on the other side. So you will need this as well. What you will need for your grip tape, especially as well, is one of these, a razor blade. You can use a knife if you don't have a razor blade, or a box cutter. Personally, I like to start with putting the grip tape on the deck. It makes everything easier. I think it's the trickiest part of building a scooter as well, so getting that out of the way first is nice. When you're doing the grip tape, you want to make sure you have a clear space to do it in. So I'm going to start moving my other parts over here and making sure the surface that I'm working on is nice and clear, especially when you're working with sharper objects. So we've got the deck and the grip tape. There's a few ways you can do grip tapes on your scooter. You could go the real simple way, and you could just cut it as a little rectangle from here to here. Obviously it wouldn't be coming back here and it wouldn't be coming up from there. This is where your feet are, so it's not going to be too detrimental with your riding. Now if you wanted to look really professional and really nice, a lot of people like to do the full deck, what means grip tape's going all the way to the back and it's also going all the way to the front. For you guys today, and for the person I'm building this for, I'm actually going to go from the very back all the way up to the top. I'm either gonna actually let it come up through here into the welds. You guys will see how I'll do it and I'll show you guys that right now. What you want to 100% make sure you've done first is take off your back brake and take off your back axle. So let's get started on that now. So for this deck, it's 2 6s. So we have the back axle and the brake off. You want to 100% make sure if you're taking any parts off your scooter, you want to be working in a clean area, a clean space, so I can clearly see I got my 2 axle points here and I've got my brake and the brake bolt. You don't want to lose any little parts. Sometimes it can be really hard to get those parts. Before you start applying the grip tape, you want to make sure that the top of your deck is nice and clean. There shouldn't be any dust, any dirt, not even hair on it. You want to make sure it's nice and clean before you apply the grip tape. When you're applying the grip tape, I highly suggest only peeling off half the back. And I also suggest having nails. Will make it go quicker. So only take off about 1/3 or 1/2 of the backing, because lots of people take the whole thing off, and if you accidentally place it in the wrong spot, it'll be tricky to get off. So let's get this on in the right position. I want to make sure that this Alexandra Madsen is coming through. We also want to make sure the top of the grip tape is coming to the top of the deck when applying it down. So this is the trickiest part. Patience is key when it comes to putting grip tape on. Alrighty, so let's measure out where our grip tape is. So I like to feel where the deck is underneath the grip tape and then feel how much excess grip tape is coming off. And if you find that one side has got a lot more than the other, you've put it on a bit too crooked. Now for what I want this grip tape to be, the name's going to be perfect. So I think that's all good. Now what you want to do is grab the grip tape backing from underneath it, press down as well at the same time, and what you're going to do is you're going to start pulling and pressing, pulling and pressing until you get all the way to the end and you've put your grip tape on. So, going to your head tube, the best place to start is here. Now, a lot of decks, they just have a plain down tube coming down. This deck is quite a lightweight deck and has a lot going on with the down tube. So, what I would suggest is starting off on the outside first. And what you want to do is use the deck as a guideline. See how I'm cutting alongside the head tube there? Rest up the blade against the head tube and cut downwards. Once you've used the side of the deck to cut along down, you want to start pressing down the side of the grip tape onto the deck. And you want to repeat this on the other side as well. So hold the grip tape, hold the deck. Be really careful because you don't want to actually cut the deck. Cut downwards and press down. And what I'm going to do for people who have decks with an internal cutout, you want to do the same thing that you did on the side, but just in the middle. Again, if you don't have a deck like that, you don't have to do this step. So this is the trickiest part when it comes to doing grip tape. You want to find yourself something really tiny. I like to use a really super tiny Allen key, because what you're going to use this to do is to file around the welds of the head tube. So you're going to need to use your index finger and your other hand to hold the tiny Allen key, and you're going to look for the welds. So when you find the welds, you want to start pushing into them with the tiny tool you have. It could be a tiny screwdriver, it could be anything in which you can use to file down, and you want to start outlining where the welds are on the deck. Now, some decks have really clean welds and it can be a bit tricky to find them. Again, same thing with applying grip tape. You just want to practice patience. This is the part that you don't want to muck up. So you can already see I'm starting to make an outline there. So coming along the side and coming around here for the weld. And the more you file down, the easier it's going to be to cut through. Well, I've finished the outlining around the welds. Now what I'm going to do is do the easier part, what is just file the sides and slash the edge of the scooter. Now you can use another Allen key for this, preferably a bigger one, or you could even just use a file. A file kind of gets it done a lot easier. With the Allen key, you just have to make sure you're applying quite a bit of pressure just to make sure it's actually filing down the grip tape. The reason why we file the sides of the grip tapes is because it's a lot easier to cut through. When you're cutting through the grit of the grip tape, it can make it a bit chunky and skew-if when you're cutting it. So filing down the grit from the grip tape allows you to have a smoother cut and a cleaner cut as well. It won't be so chunky and jagged. So now we've done the full outline of the scooter grip tape. Well, we're missing one thing. We need to make a little cut through here, through the brake. And if you remember, that is why we took the axle out. Because what we're going to do is, with our finger, we're going to find where the grip tape dips in, and then you'll find the spot where the deck starts. Now, with the razor blade, you want to make a little cut through, and then cut all the way out to the end like that. Find the little corners and start cutting into them, because what's going to happen is it's going to be a lot easier to file through. So that should be perfect. Now we're going to grab that Allen key, or if you're using a file, grab that, and you're going to start filing through here. So you can see already we've got an outline. So if this is square, you would only need to make a cut in the middle and 2 cuts on the side. Because it's rounded, I've made a few more cuts just to make it a lot easier when it comes to filing. Alrighty, so we've now made the outline of the deck through filing the sides. We need to do one more step though before actually cutting, and this is a step that I see missed a lot, and it can make the final cut a lot trickier. What you want to do is you want to slightly pinch up the grip tape on the sides. The reason why we do this is because when you are filing it, you're pushing down the grip tape, and sometimes it can stick to the sides, and when you're trying to cut it, it can be really tricky. So you want to make sure that that's nice and lifted up for where the file line is. You don't want to lift the grip tape off the deck, but you want to make sure that you've got nothing sticking to the sides that's going to hinder that final cut. So I think that's pretty good, and we can get started in cutting the grip tape. So when you're making the final cut for the grip tape, you don't want the deck to be flat. You want it to be on a bit of an angle. And what you're going to do is with the razor blade, you're going to come in from underneath. You're going to find a spot, make a small little incision, and you're going to want to cut through. I highly suggest using a blade that's not moving, because I'm actually going to have to hold this. Now, you want to start cutting. The important part is to keep the blade at the same angle. If you start moving it like this, it's going to start jagging into your grip tape and you're going to have a wavy line. So keep it nice and straight. You want to keep it at the same angle the whole way through. Cool, so what you want to make sure, guys, is that you're keeping the grip tape that's coming off, because what we're going to use for this is to lightly slide it across the edge of the grip tape. You want to make sure you're not sanding the deck, just the very edge of the grip tape. What this is doing is making sure that you're not going to have the grip tape chunk off on your first tail whip. It's going to really press down the grip tape onto the edge. That's what skateboarders do, and it works really well. Well done. So what we're doing is we're making sure to press hard enough to cut through the grip tape, but not too hard that we're scratching the deck too much. Once you've made a singular cut around, you might have to go over a few things you've missed. For me, I've been doing this for a long time, so I know what the pressure I should be applying is, and I can do it all in one cut just like that. Alrighty, so now that you've finished your grip tape, you've sanded down all the edges, you want to move to your front end of your scooter up here where the headset is. So my next step when building a scooter is to chuck the headset bearings in and chuck the fork on, get the compression system all sorted. Now, you're probably thinking, yep, cool, there's my headset bearing, just chuck it in, that's ready to go, right? Well, you're wrong. So whenever we're doing anything on our scooter, we want to 100% make sure that everything is greased. In here specifically, sometimes when our bearings never get taken out and we only take them out when they, for example, break or something like that, they can be very hard to get out and they get stuck. You try hammering them out and then the whole bearing kind of casing just explodes on you. So it is very important to get some grease and just chuck a bit of this on the outside of your headset cup. So with this, now you might be asking, oh, what type of grease do I get? All-purpose grease, any type of grease will work. You're just wanting to work a real little bit into the headset cup so your bearing doesn't get stuck if you ever need to replace your headset bearings. Now repeat this on the bottom as well. I'm only putting a real little bit. Grease works really well and it lasts forever, so you don't want to cake it on in there so it starts oozing out, but just a little bit. So for putting in your headset, you're going to need your headset bearings and you're also going to need your fork. these are your two headset bearings. Now what you're going to notice is that one side's going to taper in and one side is going to be flat. Now when you're putting these headset bearings into your headset cups, you want to make sure the arrow is pointing towards the headset cup. I see this a lot, so flat side going in and it stuffs up the scooter. So arrow is pointing into the headset cup. Now with the bottom one, if you try and put it in this way, it's just going to fall out. So get your fork ready to go. You're going to need to take the compression cap off. That's why we have our trusty tools here. I believe this is a 6, I am right. So let's get this compression cap out. Alrighty. Now that you've got the compression bolt out, you can slide the bearing over the fork, and now you should have grease in the inside of your bottom cup there. So when you slide the fork through, it should fit nice and flush. Alrighty, now this is the important part. This is what we like to call the pinch ring. This is what's going to keep this whole section together. So right at the top here, you can see my fork is moving about. That's why we have this. It's called the pinch ring. Place it over and it pinches in your headset. So now fork isn't moving all around in there. What you can do now is chuck the headset cover, over the fork, push it all in, and that's all ready to go. I had to take the bolts out just so I could get this clamp out of the packaging, but also not only that, you always want to make sure that you're greasing these bolts. The main reason why is because the clamp itself is aluminium. These bolts are metal, and what can happen is if there's no grease on them, they can start fusing together, and that's when you have that horrible crunchy noise when you're loosening and tightening your bolts. It just helps the lifespan of your clamp and your bolts so you don't strip the threads out or even round them because they're so stuck in there. So grease is always going to be great for when it comes to anything with threads going into metal. So we've greased all the bolts. What other bolt will we might need to grease? Compression cap bolt. So any thread that's on your scooter, you always want to make sure you're using grease on it. So this is our compression clamp. A lot of other scooters are going to be running an internal compression system. That's usually separate. For the person I'm building this for, they're using the SES clamp, meaning the whole compression kit is within this 4-bolt clamp. There's a compression cap in the middle, and it's going to compress down to keep it all together. Usually the standard is having it done underneath your bars. You probably have a 2-bolt clamp. There'll probably be a slit in the bars to help the clamp pinch down onto that compression kit. For this compression in particular, there's going to be no slit because there's nothing inside the bars for it to compress down onto, meaning it is the strongest form of scooter compression you can get. Once you've slid the SES compression clamp over your forks, you want to get your compression bolt. So this is the one it came with, but the one with the Aztec fork is a lot thicker, so we're going to use the one that came with the Aztec fork. This other one is going to be too small. What we're going to do is get a bit of grease. We're going to start putting it on the threads. Now that we have the bolt with the grease on it, we're just going to drop into there. That's okay if it kind of misses like that. We want to get our 6, line it up with that, and start to thread it in. So I've tightened down the compression. It is not completely tight though, because you will notice that I haven't got my front wheel on, and I like to chuck that on so I can align my clamp with the wheel. It's a bit tricky to see when you're working just with the clamp and the fork. So I'm going to chuck the wheels on, I'm going to chuck the back brake on as well, and then we can start aligning that compression system. So we're going to open up the wheels. Awesome. So these look like 110s, which is great, because that's what we're going to need for this scooter. You're going to find with some scooter companies and the parts they make, there's compatibility issues. So you always want to make sure that, for example, your fork fits the wheel size that you're wanting. So your fork might be only 110 compatible. You might have bought 120mm wheels, and unfortunately they're not going to fit. So whenever you're buying products, always make sure that they're the right size for the part that you're buying. So we've got the axle out of the fork. We're going to get our wheel. We're going to very gently put it in. We don't want to start scratching anything. What we might need to do is just slowly align it. Now what we're going to do is grab that axle and we're going to put it through. Now before we get the other bolt and just chuck it in there, what are we going to do? Grease it. We're going to start tightening the wheel. Awesome. We're putting the brake on now, and what we're going to make sure we do is grease the bolt. Let's chuck this bolt in. You can feel it catch the thread. That's ready. Now we need the 6. We're going to start slowly tightening that. Awesome. I don't want to crank this down too hard, but just enough so it's snug. Now that we've got the brake on, we're going to chuck that back wheel on. So again, grab your back axle, and it should be easy to find because you should have had a clear space to chuck that on. And I'm going to come back with that grease, chuck a bit on the bolt, and then we're going to start screwing that into the axle. Those 2 6s again, you might be working with 2 5s or even a nut and a bolt, and you're going to tighten it up. Got both the front and the back wheel on, you can just double check that SES compression system and check the alignment of your wheel. I actually did it pretty spot on, but again, I've been building scooters for quite a while. I'm just going to check the tightness of my compression, and the way to check that is by half turns. Perfect. You don't want it to be doing full rotations, because the thing is, if you have a half turn, by the time you chuck your bars in, it's going to have that weight to bring it around. But to have a tight compression system that's going to be smooth rolling and still spinning, you want half turns. So the bars that we have for the person that we're building this scooter for are just a bit too tall. So we've got their old bars here. We're going to take them out, size them up, and cut them down for them. So they're going to be running what they need to be riding. Running too tall bars can make it really tricky to ride. So we're going to cut these down for them. So now what we're doing, because we've cut the bars, we need to make sure we're filing the edges so you don't have any sharp excess metal coming around. What you're going to need for this is a flat file to get around the outside of the bar, and for the inside of the bar you're going to need a round file so you can get in on the inside. Because these bars are going to be run with SES compression system, we do not need to cut a slit in the bars. If you're running an internal compression system, you will need to cut a slit from around maybe an inch or smaller, depending on how big your double clamp is. But for now, we're running SES, we don't need to worry about that. Bars all cut down in width and height. And like I said before, no slit in the bars. What I'm going to do now is actually chuck the grips on first. The best thing to do is to use hairspray. I highly suggest not using things like deodorant or WD-40, because then you end up having throttle grip for a really long time. Hairspray works the best because it goes on wet, but then it dries up and gets really sticky, and you're not going to get that throttle grip. For today though, we're just going to muscle them on. No stress. Just takes a bit more time. Got the grips on. Now we can chuck them in the SES clamp. With your SES clamp, it's going to come with this inside the clamp. What you need to do is take that out if you're running oversized bars. This is for when you're using standard bars. Most aluminium bars will be oversized on the outer diameter and standard on the inside. That's just because they make these bars thicker. It's not as a strong material as steel, so they can afford to make the steel a bit thinner. So, should slide in all good. Ready to go. Now what you want to do is start aligning the bars. What I like to do is actually place it on the floor. A lot easier when you're standing over your scooter and you can see where your bars are, and you can use your foot to start tapping. Now my bars are actually very loose in the compression, so what I'm going to do is just tighten it a real little bit. Just tighten it a little bit. Now what I like to do with SES is I always crisscross the tightening. So whenever I tighten the bolts, and I'm only doing a real little bit just so I can grab onto the bars a bit easier, I always do top bolt, third bolt, second bolt, fourth bolt. You can do it from the fourth to the second, to the third to the first, but you always crisscross to evenly distribute the clamping so you don't warp your SES clamp. Check that your bars are all the way in. So now that I've got my wheel aligned, I'm going to start cranking down these bolts, but I am going to do a little bit at a time in that crisscross pattern. So a little bit at a time, crisscrossing. Alrighty, that's all tight. So the way you check to see if it's all tight is just by doing that little drop. No rattle, meaning that it's all tight. Let's check that it's all spinning well. It's all spinning well. And like I said, it should sound like that. When it comes to bar ends, the traditional bar end is going to be too big to fit inside of aluminium bars. Some companies produce aluminium bar ends, but for us today, we're just going to have to cut these down a little bit, make them fit. If your bar ends do not fit, never just don't run bar ends. Always make sure you've got something there to protect you. So I'm making the bar ends thinner or smaller via just shaving down the sides. As you can see, we've got lots of that little ribs there coming off just by cutting down along the side of the bar end. Now I'm not going to cut too much off just yet because you don't want to make it too small so it doesn't stay in. So let's see how we're going. Yeah, so we're going to need just a little bit more. That's okay, because I'd rather have it still a little bit too big than me have done it too small and it's just going to fall out. We're just getting the last bit of these bar ends in. You'll find sometimes you have a little bit that just doesn't want to get in. What you need to do is bring the scooter down to the floor. You want to be very gentle and very lightly. Just tap it in. Where are we now? Oh, we're already getting better. Just a little bit more on that right side. So we're going to go a little bit more to this side. What are we looking at now? I think that's it. Alrighty, so just pull out the grip. Make sure it's all flush. And that's a full scooter build. So the scooter came out really nice. One thing though you need to make sure is when you go on your first ride, always bring some tools with you because some things might come loose, especially when you've just freshly tightened it all up and put it together. Usually the first ride is when it's going to start kind of coming a bit loose. Ways you check for your scooter on what parts are loose and what you need to tighten is by doing this. I'll show you guys. So for wheels, what you want to do is just grab a full hand around the wheel and you want to start rocking side to side. Now clearly I've just tightened this up, so there's no movement or play there at all, and you want to do the same with the front wheel. Check your wheels, nothing's happening. So that's first check done. Second check would be to chuck it back down to the floor. Put your foot on the brake so the wheels aren't going anywhere. And what you want to do is slightly, not super strongly, but just slightly lift up and down. Now if there is a click back and forth in this section here, if there's a click back and forth, and as you can see there's none, you might have some flex from the metal, but that's okay. As long as there's no click back and forth, that means this compression is tight and all ready to go. So after your first ride, make sure you give those things a check, wheels, front and back, and that compression system.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
You could do that too. That would be nice. That would be pretty rad, because I've had a fun time building this up and showing you guys how to build your first scooter.